Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Tyson Fury will be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world in a year. That's according to Bob Arum and Frank Warren, who both promote Tyson Fury. He has an upcoming fight on June 15th against Tom Schwartz. So these comments were made at a press conference that BT Sport put on for Tyson Fury's fight on June 15th. It was announced that it will be a BT box office event. A number of interesting statements were made by Warren, Arum, and Tyson Fury himself that I wanted to touch on in this video. But let's start with this claim that Tyson Fury will be the undisputed champion in a year. So Bob Arum, he was the one that kicked this off and then subsequently backed up by Frank Warren immediately after. So they're effectively saying that these fights can happen, that there is no impediments to making these fights. You can have these fights on different networks. There is no reason that the big fights shouldn't be made. And there's a number of issues with this statement from both of these guys, because obviously, as we know, the past year or two, I think we've all had our fill of boxing politics, the evolving boxing silos that have developed even just in recent months in the heavyweight division. You clearly have a lot of issues at play here, money being one of them, broadcasting issues, where fighters can go, where they can't fight. There's a whole myriad of issues that, while the likes of Arum and Frank Warren say are easy to overcome, clearly they are not, because if they were easy to overcome, Tyson Fury probably would have fought Anthony Joshua on April 13th. The fight was there for them. They talked about that for a split second or so, but Tyson Fury's promoter Frank Warren said, look, it needs to be 50-50. Anthony Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn was willing to offer 60-40. But Fury and Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion, both want 50-50, even though Fury has made a few different statements at different points saying that maybe an amount of money it might be able to get the deal done. Ultimately, that sort of came to nothing. So while there is the talk of Tyson Fury is going to be involved in these big fights, and from what Warren and Arum are saying, it's going to be very soon that he is going to be in these fights, that it's going to make him the undisputed champion, I think fans are right to be a bit skeptical about this, because certainly I am. What we've seen in the past year or two in the heavyweight division gives me very little hope that these issues, the broadcasting issues, the politics of boxing, the money issues, who's the A side, where it's being broadcast, who's getting what cut of what pie, it gives me very little confidence that these issues can be overcome and an undisputed champion crowned inside a year. But that would also be dependent on Tyson Fury fighting Deontay Wilder first. So what you're talking about is having to get through Wilder and then on to Joshua. And there seems to be all sorts of issues just to get the rematch done with Deontay Wilder, because it was there and then it wasn't when Tyson Fury joined ESPN and Top Rank, and more boxing politics were introduced into that situation. So it sounds good saying that the undisputed fight will happen and that Fury will be the undisputed champion in a year's time. But the reality is, because of a whole number of factors, very unlikely in my book. But Tyson Fury, he went on to say that he's won more belts than anyone else in the division today, and that when he beat Vladimir Klitschko, he became the undisputed champ because everyone agrees that Vladimir was undisputed. So, I mean, that's a nice line, but it does sort of neglect the fact that Vladimir Klitschko wasn't undisputed, and he didn't have the full house of belts that you need to claim that you were undisputed. He was unified, sure he was, with 3 belts, and then Tyson Fury claimed those 3 belts, immediately losing one of them, the IBF, when he decided to rematch Fury, and he was stripped of the IBF, later Charles Martin taking that belt. So certainly Tyson Fury did become the man that beat the man. He ended Klitschko's run, but he was never undisputed. But certainly the whole lineal champion status, which is something Fury's been playing up, Warren's been playing up, and ESPN and Top Rank want to push at the American audience, that is really what he has to do, because he has no other hardware at the moment. But Frank Warren went on to say that Tyson Fury is the people's champion. So I know that's one thing to say that, but he went on to add that he is now more popular than Anthony Joshua in Britain. And I'm sure that's going to evoke a certain response from Anthony Joshua's fans. But I don't live in the UK, so it's not exactly, I can't say with 100% accuracy whether that's true or not, but just on the boxing sort of fandom, and you can get a general flavour of who the popular fighters are. Both these guys are extremely popular, but I would have thought Anthony Joshua was still the more popular fighter in Britain than Tyson Fury. But of course, Frank Warren, as his promoter, it's his prerogative to talk up Fury, to talk up his achievements in the division, and to play on that Deontay Wilder draw, which obviously many people thought that he won that fight, including Warren, Fury, and everyone involved in Fury's camp. And I believe that he won that fight as well, but that's kind of by the by now. It is a draw, but it springboarded him into this deal with ESPN and Top Rank, which is going to pay him handsomely over a number of fights, over a number of years. And his first fight against Tom Schwartz, who knows what he's going to get paid for that, but it will be somewhere in the millions of dollars. But this is a showcase sort of fight, and Bob Arum spoke in the press conference of using the ESPN reach and even its parent company Disney to get Fury in front of Americans, and he wants to see him on the talk shows, and he mentioned Jimmy Kimmel, and he believes that Tyson Fury will mesmerize the American market. He said as a personality, he will take America by storm. And some of these comments from Bob Arum, it's interesting because it's almost like he doesn't acknowledge that the whole promotion that involved Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, which gave Tyson Fury some visibility with more boxing fans and the public in America. It's almost like Bob Arum sort of treats that like it's never happened, that he effectively, the way that he pitches it, it's like he's saying that Tyson Fury is starting from scratch. And I guess to some extent, maybe he is, because different network, obviously the Wilder fight with Fury was on Showtime, maybe different channels were being used to promote that. But they have a big reach on ESPN, 80-something million subscribers. But we have to point out for this first fight with Schwartz, it is actually on ESPN Plus, a much smaller audience, which is, 3 or 4 million subscribers. So if you don't have the app, you're not going to see Fury fight, and if you don't buy the pay-per-view in the United Kingdom, you won't see him fight live. Obviously, these fights will be available in other forms. Some people will try to pick them up illegally, or they will try to watch a replay later on. But using ESPN's reach and the power of its parent company Disney to try and get him on some of the talk shows and other bits and pieces, that is going to be a good strategy. And Bob Arum is talking about, he can be a guy that is like another George Foreman, and not so much in terms of the comeback, but the charisma that he has, and that he can parlay that into sort of achieving a place within Americans' hearts, that he can use his story to actually build his profile. And Bob Arum said they are going to put him in front of millions of people, and it won't just be sports fans or just boxing fans. They want him in Americans' homes, people to know him, people to care for him, and that their goal is to make him the most famous athlete in the world. And that is certainly a pretty bold sort of, goal to aim for. Maybe it's a little bit beyond what they could achieve. I mean, boxing to some extent, it's maybe doesn't have the glamour and some of the limelight that it used to have in the American market, or even the world more broadly. It is for some countries a more of a niche sport these days. But certainly there are several million boxing fans around the world who know Tyson Fury, who want to see him do well, and he is going to have a platform to show his wares on ESPN. This first fight, I think we all sort of recognize what it is. It's sort of a showcase fight. They're going to build from here, and we'll have to see him in some bigger fights in the next year if he is really going to get all that money that potentially he could get in this deal, which is, Bob Arum has confirmed if he has all the fights that he should have, the big fights, he should make over $100 million. But Bob Arum does want to build him, and they want to use ESPN to make him a massive star. And I guess some of that's going to come down to his personality, but also the in-ring performance is going to be a major part in that, because he's got to look good. June 15th, he's got to put on a show against Tom Schwartz, because if he doesn't, well, then maybe it might fall flat a little bit. But if he's going to be undisputed in a year, certainly that would require him to fight Anthony Joshua and also Deontay Wilder, because at the moment he only has the lineal championship status. And even among some fans, people think that's a bit gimmicky, but he certainly has the opportunity to fight these other guys. But we'll have to see whether broadcasting and other issues, money, all sorts of things, boxing politics can be overcome. I like what they're saying. How viable some of it is, certainly debatable. But what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.